Hello and welcome back to the Frogs of War podcast. I'm Anthony North. That's Russ Hodges, and we are back to talk through the week of TCU athletics, and we'll cover some baseball news coming out of the College World Series as we've hit into the off season. Some basketball stuff, some football. Recruiting is on fire, as well. Here in Fort Worth, it's on fire. It's triple digits. It's hot. It's hit full time summer. Russ, up there, you're under like a cloud of smoke. We're in a little bit of an apocalypse, but how are you doing right now, Russ?
Yeah, things are interesting up here in northern Illinois, to say the least. We've been out in a heavy smog these last few days due to the Canadian wildfires. A lot of athletic activities and events in the area have been canceled the last few days with the all the unhealthy air that's out there. And today was particularly nasty, approaching 90 degrees, humid, combined with all that dirty air. It's been unpleasant the last couple of days up here, but hoping it'll pass by the time we get into next week, or maybe not with the fireworks that are going to be going off this weekend with folks celebrating 4th of July. I know we got a fireworks show going on down the road here in Rochelle Saturday, and then I think there's going to be a different show put on by the city Sunday evening. So there's gonna be a lot of smog and a lot of smoke going up here in Rochelle as we get closer to the 4th.
Yeah, hopefully that all clears up soon, and everybody has a safe Fourth of July coming up. Before we jump into the meat of the podcast today, I want to start off with some big news for us here on the Frogs of War podcast. I want to say that today the podcast is brought to you. We have a bit of a sponsor brought to you by our friends at Charlie Hustle Clothing Company. Charlie Hustle is a vintage inspired clothing company based out of Kansas City, Missouri, that specializes in hometown and collegiate gear, known for quality, comfort, and unique designs. We know there's been a whole lot of new TCU apparel out there lately, but these guys have some new stuff coming out that is, Russ, you and I, we've seen a preview of this. It's choice apparel coming out from Charlie Hustle, and they've got this college roadshow coming up, visiting 8 schools across Texas and Oklahoma, and so they're really expanding their footprint in the college and university space. And that first stop is here in Fort Worth, and it'll be a brand new collection of brand new TCU apparel being released for the Horned Frog fans out there. So you can check them out at Charlie Hustle Co. That's Charlie Hustle Co. On Twitter. Visit their website, charliehustle.com. And for listeners of this podcast and anyone out there, spread the word. Use the promo code FROGSOWAR. That's all one word, FROGSOWAR. At checkout, you get 15% off of your order, and get yourself some new apparel. There's all kinds of other great stuff out there. We know there's a lot of TCU fans who do live in Kansas City. They've got some Kansas City stuff tied there already, but they've partnered with lots of schools across the country, and there's a couple of little TCU things on there right now, but be on the lookout. Next month, there'll be a big drop of new TCU apparel coming out, so make sure to go check that out. Frogs O War, promo code at charliehustle.com. Vintage made fresh. All right. With that, let's move into the TCU baseball off-season news, as the Horned Frogs have added 2 big-time transfers and a potential transfer on the way, as also losing some transfers out the door. Russ, what have we seen this week in the transfer portal for Frogball?
Yeah, no days off for Kendall Rogers in D1 baseball. Kendall Rogers, I'm sure every college baseball fan knows who he is, one of the best insiders in the industry when it comes to college baseball news. And of course, with the College World Series done and over with, it is now off-season time, which also means portal time. And there have been uh, dozens and dozens of players entering the portal, finding new homes over these last several days. And TCU has already added 2 significant transfers in the portal. The first one is Wichita State two-way standout Payton Tolle. This is a big kid. He's 6'6", 250 pounds. Hit 311 this past season as a sophomore for Wichita State. 13 home runs, 50 RBIs. Primarily was a designated hitter when he was not pitching, but was also a very effective pitcher for the Shockers this year. 97 strikeouts in 85 and two-thirds innings, had fewer than 20 walks on the season, ERA of 4.62, was a second team Rawlings All-American and another second team All-American in one of the other organizations. I can't remember what the acronym was off the top of my head, unfortunately, but this is a big acquisition. TCU, you felt maybe going into the offseason they would look to add some pitching. I know the freshmen did a tremendous job, Cole Klecker, Louis Rodriguez, Ben Abelt, but you have some veteran guys that were not so effective. Guys like Cam Brown and Ryan Vanderhei and River Ridings. I can't even remember the last time he touched the mound. So TCU being aggressive and looking to add to a 44 win roster. And Payton Tolle is someone who will be able to compete for a spot in the weekend rotation right away, and somebody that could step right in as a big bat in your offense, whether that be at the designated hitter spot or he might play some infield. I think he's primarily a DH, but a plus bat acquired by TCU in addition to a very good pitcher. So Payton Tolle is the first big name, and then also TCU added freshman from Pepperdine, Jack Basseer. I hope I'm saying that last name right. If I'm not, I apologize, but very effective freshman for the Waves. He hit 345 this season, was on the all-freshman team, and was a second-team all-conference honoree in the West Coast Conference. And he plays third base, so that's pretty noteworthy because, as we are well aware, Braden Taylor is expected to be drafted in the first round of the upcoming 2023 MLB first-year player draft. I'm sure there will be multiple other TCU players drafted as well, but it's believed that Braden Taylor's TCU career is likely over, with him likely being a first-round pick. So to go into the portal and bring in a young, talented player who started, I think he started almost every game for Pepperdine at third base. That's a player who could come in and potentially compete for that starting third base spot right away. So these two players coming in. We've also talked about Ben Hampton, the left-handed pitcher from West Virginia, coming in. It was a first-team All Big 12 pitcher this season. TCU's offseason is off to a tremendous start in terms of portal additions, and TCU may not be done either, because I know it's sort of a meme on Twitter at this point, but Chase Burns, who is a high, a lot of potential. Chase Burns has a really talented pitcher for Tennessee. He's been with that club for the last couple of seasons. He has officially entered the transfer portal after several days of rumors and speculation as to whether or not he was going to stay at Tennessee. He has reportedly entered the portal, and it sounds like TCU is kind of leading the race for him. I believe Vanderbilt is another school that's in the running for him, but a lot of TCU accounts going back and forth about the possibility of Chase Burns coming to Fort Worth. So another big time pitcher that could be coming to Fort Worth if that ultimately winds up happening. As of right now, there's nothing to confirm on the Chase Burns front, but Payton Tolle, Jack Basseer, these are two players that are going to have an impact for TCU next season for sure.
Yeah, on Toll, going back to Toll, I think we need to try to get a Shoheitan Toltani as how we should refer to him for the Frogs. We had, Florida with Jack Caglione. He took them to the finals and was one of the Golden Spikes finalists. And I mean that's the kind of season that Tolle could put up with the Horned Frogs in an organization that can certainly make that kind of a run to the College World Series and put him in the national spotlight in a way that perhaps at Wichita State in the American he wasn't able to do. So definitely excited to see these two guys. Basseer, looking at his numbers, and yeah, to come in as a true freshman and to put up the stats that he did, and basically starting every game the entire season out there in the West Coast Conference is really strong as well, and looks to be very likely to step right into that role. And there's not to say that there won't be a drop off when Braden Taylor heads professional, but I think we had some of this last season where some of these really highly beloved Horned Frogs departed and were being backfilled by true freshmen, and there was the concern of what that would look like. And obviously the pitching staff that you mentioned, and Anthony Silva replacing Tommy Sacco at shortstop, all of that worked out very favorably for the Frogs. So I think we could be in for something like that as well. As far as Chase Burns moving from the Volunteers to the Horned Frogs, I think, yeah, to be determined, if someone like LSU wants to get into the race and they take all of their Jello shot money and drop it on his doorstep, it's gonna be hard to say no to that. So understand that if LSU does want to get in the race, that might be a tough one to chase for Chase Burns. But as far as looking at the Horned Frogs who are entering the transfer portal and departing Fort Worth, we've got first baseman David Bishop, who was the starting first baseman as a true freshman last season. He stepped in right away and was kind of a breakout and a bright spot in last season. Coming into this season, he got off to a really strong start out there in Arlington. Those first few games of the season, swinging a really hot bat, but right after that, things went downhill very quickly, and his batting average plummeted to the low 200s. He was in the series against Florida State. He committed an error in each of those 3 games. So his fielding fell off, his batting fell off, and really, in addition to that, Cole Fontenelle came in and was just phenomenal in that spot, and basically made it impossible to take Cole Fontenelle out of the lineup. So David Bishop kind of fell down that depth chart and was never, probably couldn't see the light at the end of that tunnel. So perfectly understandable for him to go find an opportunity elsewhere, to where, I mean, he's obviously he's put it on display in against some of the best teams in the country. And I would have every expectation that he goes somewhere, and I haven't seen if maybe he's already announced that he's gone somewhere, but he'll step right in and be a big contributor someplace else for a team that's competing for conference and a berth to the NCAA tournament. I'm confident of that.
Going back to last year, I think Bishop was TCU had its crop of freshmen who stepped up this season, and there were several of them. Bishop was one of the freshmen last year that really stepped up and played an integral role for the TCU offense as a number 4 hitter. He was the player that was protecting Braden Taylor in the TCU lineup for most of last season, if not all of last season, and showed a lot of promise. It's not like he was hitting 300 plus or anything like that, but he had some really good moments and looked the part of a Power 5 collegiate first baseman, playing some good baseball, and was a player that I think folks inside college baseball talked about as a breakout candidate for his sophomore season. I know Kendall Rogers had tweeted about Bishop at least once or twice, how he had put on a lot of muscle over the offseason, bulking up to to get ready for a breakout year at the plate, and it just didn't really materialize for him for whatever reason. And you pointed out his defensive struggles, and that was an area where TCU as a team really struggled during that, early to mid part of the season where the team really had that lull. And he was one of the players in the lineup, you know, every day throughout most of that period. And average dropped to, I want to say it was in the 220s and wasn't hitting for a whole lot of power and just felt like he was kind of, I don't know if regressing is the right word, but just slumping, struggling. And then you have Cole Fontenelle coming along and just swiping that starting spot away because of how well he was playing. I mean, he had a phenomenal season at the plate. He played some good defense at first base as well. So Fontenelle, also being a switch hitter, offers more versatility on the offensive end than Bishop does. And I think as you go into this offseason, Bishop didn't even have a chance to be a DH because of how well Curtis Byrne was playing uh, near the end of the season. And, some of the guys, you look at Bishop, you look at Byrne and Elijah Nunez, Austin Davis. These are all guys that were really struggling in that month of April when the team was struggling. And Nunez turned his season around. Davis turned his season around. Curtis Byrne moved into the DH role, which I felt like that had to be tough knowing you had a freshman catcher come in and take your job essentially. But he hit the ball so well and came through for TCU so many times toward the end of the season. Uh, Bishop just never seemed to be able to cash in on his opportunities when they were there. And I think when you look at TCU's 2024 class, I know there's a really talented high school prospect, Zach Wattis, who's a first baseman that's going to be coming in for 2024. So when you have Cole Fontenelle in front of you and you have a talented high school prospect like Zach Wattis coming in behind you, not to mention Payton Tolle coming in, who's at the least going to be your starting DH. The writing is kind of on the wall at that point. So best of luck to David Bishop wherever he goes, and hopefully wherever he does wind up, he can pick up where he left off during his freshman season and uh, ultimately develop into that player that folks were talking about before the season started.
Yeah, TCU did also have one other transfer out is infielder Owen Blackledge. He did not get much playing time, and I guess in this his sophomore season, I think he might have had, I don't know, 6 at bats, something like that on the season. So not a big contributor. I think all accounts that he was a very strong locker room guy, and a very well liked member of the team, but certainly ready to go take his opportunity to get some playing time elsewhere in college baseball. So also best of luck to him in his next step in college baseball. And yeah, you mentioned Braden Taylor. The Major League Baseball draft is coming up in a week or so on July 9th. Will be the first round, and Braden Taylor, all indications are that he's projected as a first round draft pick. I think I've seen some mock drafts as high as like 5 or 6. Many projections in the top 10, top 15. Potentially to your Cubs or to the White Sox in Chicago as well. So uh, I think it'll just be very exciting to see where he ends up, and certainly in line for a big payday and ready to hop right into that minor league baseball and work his way up to the show.
Well, the Cubs need a third baseman. Let me tell you that they absolutely need help at third base. You have your middle infield locked up with Dansby Swanson and Nico Horner patrolling the middle of that infield, but my gosh, Patrick Wisdom, Christopher Morel. It doesn't matter who the Cubs put
You
over
could
there
be
at third
making up
base
those
right
names.
now.
Those are I've never heard of these people.
It's
That's
it's it's
it's
trouble for the Cubs right now at that spot. Ever since Chris Bryant was traded, Chris Bryant, of course,
hmm
played third base for 6, 7 years for the club, and Braden Taylor would look very good in a Cubs uniform, let me tell you that. But looking at some of these other TCU players who are draft eligible, of course, to be draft eligible, you have to have played 3 collegiate seasons, or you have to be 21 years old uh, by the time the draft rolls around. So, looking at some of the names here: Cam Brown, Ryan Vanderhei, Elijah Nunez, Cole Fontenelle, Garrett Wright, Luke Savage, Hunter Hodges. A lot of players for TCU who could be drafted at some point. For those who don't know, and I'm sure it's probably very few, the MLB draft is unlike other drafts in the sense that it is very long. You have multiple dozens of rounds in the MLB draft. It's not a 2 round draft like the NBA. It's not a 7 round draft like the NFL. It's a very long draft. So um, I think for some of these juniors, particularly Cole Fontenelle or Trey Richardson, who I didn't mention, is also a junior. Curtis Byrne. Um, if they're drafted in the first 10 rounds, I think it's a situation where you have to strongly consider it because I think when you look at the scale of pay as far as draft picks go and signing bonuses and things like that, it really falls off a cliff after the first 10 rounds. So I think could any other TCU players be drafted in the first 10 rounds? I think Cole Fontenelle could potentially be a pick in the first 10 rounds. Trey Richardson, Garrett Wright. Will those players go? I'm not really sure. I know there's been some chatter on social media that Garrett Wright is a player who may have also played his last game at TCU. Um, I know he had a good season. I feel like he should come back for one more year. I really feel that with this group, it's an interesting group when you think about it in the sense that putting Braden Taylor aside, Sam Stottenborough, Austin Davis, they both came in as graduate transfers. So you know that they're both done. But you didn't really have an actual senior who got significant playing time. All of those players that I mentioned, they were all juniors. Anthony Silva, freshman, Carson Bowen, freshman, Cohen Feezer, Logan Maxwell, they're both sophomores. So um, I really feel that with this group, some of those guys could get drafted highly, but I feel, and this might be a little selfish of me. Admittedly, yeah, it is a little selfish of me. There are some purple glasses being put on here, but I really feel like for a Garrett Wright or a Cole Fontenelle or a Trey Richardson, a Luke Savage, even Elijah Nunez, I feel like there's more reward in the future if you were to come back for one more year. Of course, at the end of the day, if they decide to go pro, we'll always support them. They'll always be frogs. But I feel that if this team were to run it back with all of the guys who are still eligible to return, plus the players that are coming in through the portal and the incoming freshmen that'll be on campus next year, I think TCU's 2024 team would have a chance to do some really special things. So it'll be exciting to watch, and hopefully there won't be too many players departing from the roster, at least from my selfish TCU fans' opinion.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's definitely a point of diminishing return there where, you know, how much better are you going to get your draft stock that it's worth coming back? But there's, I think a lot of these guys are going to be right around, if they are drafted, they'll be around that cut line where it's going to be a tough decision on whether to go back to TCU or to head into professional career. So yeah, it will be interesting. And um, after the draft, the players will have until August 1st to make that decision to sign with their professional team or to return. So we still won't have a whole lot of clarity on this for another month or so, but um, more to come. I would say I think it feels, even looking at the prospect rankings, it still feels like Cam Brown will probably be drafted in a place where he'll want to go ahead and go. Um, I think his career at TCU has been a bit of a roller coaster, and I can see him ready to go ahead and do the next thing, go do something else, um, and get paid. So I think him and Garrett Wright are the ones that are maybe most likely to leap away, but um, we'll see. So draft coming up July 9th, and then we'll wait until the 1st of August to find out who stays. Moving on to a different draft, to the NBA draft, where no Horned Frogs were selected. However, Mike Miles Jr. and Damion Baugh did both sign to join with professional teams. So Mike Miles Jr. gets to stay home with the Dallas Mavericks. He gets a two-way contract, which basically means he's signed to both the G League team and the NBA team, and can be moved between rosters back and forth freely. And his salary compensation is based on time served with either team. And then Damion Baugh signed with the LA Lakers on an Exhibit 10 deal, which is a more complicated deal. And Russ, you know this more than I do, I guess, but basically he's kind of on a league minimum deal where it's a 1 year deal that if he does make the team, he's locked in for a year, but he does still have to reach that NBA roster, or it's back down to the G League minimum. So it's a wide range of potential salary outcomes for him. But in any case, both Miles and Ball will get a chance in professional basketball, a chance to impress and make an NBA roster, beginning with Summer League. Both are on Summer League rosters starting next week on July 3rd.
Yeah, disappointed to see Mike Miles Jr. go undrafted. I think a lot of people were also surprised and share that same sentiment. I'm not saying that he should have been a first round pick. I know we were both kind of in agreement on that, but um, you look at how a lot of teams navigate through the second round. You have a lot of teams that are the second round is just kind of bizarre in the sense that you have teams that are basically selling off draft picks. You have teams that are trading second rounders for future assets. You have teams that'll draft international players from Israel or France or Turkey or wherever else to draft and stash them for a couple of years so that they're not financially obligated for those players for an extended period of time. But then you also have teams that'll draft players that may not have the elite upside that these first rounders do, but they were effective contributing players at the collegiate level. And for Mike Miles, who improved in multiple areas of his game and I think had the best season of his career at TCU, a guy who came in right away and was productive as a freshman, improved his shooting this year, improved his passing. It was a surprise that he wasn't drafted at least in the second round. But I also chalk that up to the way that teams tend to navigate through the second round. The NBA draft is all about the lottery. Once you get out of the lottery, then things tend to get much more hairy, and you tend to see a lot more movement in terms of transactions and teams trying to save money and teams trying to um, stash players overseas and whatnot. So happy to see Miles ultimately sign with the Mavericks, getting a chance to stay home, much like he did for his collegiate career, now getting a chance to stay home and try and get his professional career off the ground. So we'll definitely be following with um, the Mavs G League team. I can't remember. It might be the Texas Legends. I could be
That's
wrong
right.
about that, but
Hmm.
I think that's their G League affiliate. So go check out a Texas Legends contest and see Mike Miles in action. Damion Baugh, yeah, you mentioned an Exhibit 10 deal is basically a contract where it can be converted to a two-way contract if it has to happen before the start of the regular season. So what'll likely happen is Damion Baugh will play for the Lakers through the summer league. If they like what they see, they'll keep him on that Exhibit 10 deal through training camp in the preseason. Then they got to make a decision: is he going to be on the roster or not? If he's good enough to make the roster, I'd imagine they'll probably convert that to a two-way deal. Otherwise, they may just let him go and sign him to a G League contract or just let him go entirely. So um, definitely want to keep our eyes on Damion Baugh there, along with Mike Miles, as you said, they'll both be in action for summer league. So I know summer league is some basketball fans kind of view the summer league as a joke in some respects that um, even some of the highly drafted, highly touted rookies sometimes don't even play in the summer league. You also have sometimes some veteran players coming back that are just trying to get back into the league. It's very much a open gym type setting, but um, there will be a lot of action going on. The Utah Summer League is pretty competitive, and the environment is much more of an NBA type setting as opposed to some of the other summer league action that's more of just kind of like a open gym environment. So excited to watch them, and I'm hoping for the best for the two of them as they get their professional careers underway here.
Yeah, and it's you know, the NBA draft, like you said, is a very tricky thing. I mean, especially in the NBA is very weird right now, where some of these incredible college players that went undrafted. I mean, the list. You can't feel too terribly snubbed if you're Mike Miles or Damian Ball when former National Player of the Year like Oscar Shibwe, uh, multi-time first team All-Americans like Drew Timme, Adama Sanogo, all of these guys across college basketball who were just some of the greats while they were in college are kind of cast aside once the calendar flips to NBA time. And certainly a handful of those guys who went undrafted will find a spot in the league and make an impact. I mean, Kenrich Williams or Kenny Hustle from TCU went undrafted and went on a two-way deal, if I'm remembering correctly. I think that's right, and was on a two-way deal and ended up now he's been in the league for many years and has been a contributor and earned quite a living for himself. So this is certainly not the end of the road, and we know Mike Miles Jr. and Damian Ball will put in the work to give themselves every opportunity to make it happen in the NBA. All right, moving to football. We're getting there. We're getting closer and closer to football season. But the news has been going crazy for TCU football the last few weeks. Recruiting has been just an absolute, all of the alarms are going off for recruiting lately, in a way that is exciting to see. TCU has hit a couple of 4 stars in the last week. For the 24 class and a couple of 4 stars already booking 2 4 stars for the 2025 class, which it's crazy to think of, not that long ago, TCU got its first 2024 commitment with Hoss Haney committing. Um, that that was sometime this calendar year. It was not that long ago, and now 2024 class is filling up, but also looking ahead to rising juniors in high school, and the Horned Frogs just hitting home runs all over the place. So we can get into some of the detail here. I guess the big highlights for the 2024, it's led off by running back, 4-star running back Jeremy Payne, and 4-star wide receiver G. Kyle Baker.
Yep, I
That's
think Jakyle Baker. Yep.
Jakyle, not G. Kyle. Jakyle. That sounds right. But these guys are very highly touted recruits. I think Baker now is leading the way for the TCU class. He's a top 20 wide receiver prospect. Payne is also a top 20 running back prospect. So TCU now has at that kind of now quarterback, running back, wide receiver, you've got top 20 guys, 4-star guys for the 2024 class. Things are looking quite positive for the future of the TCU offense there.
Yeah, TCU's really been hitting on some of these skill positions. TCU also getting a commitment from Nate Palmer, who's a 4-star running back from Decatur. You mentioned Jakyle Baker, a 4-star receiver. Adrian Wilson, who I looked at his rating right now on 247. I know he's a 2025, so it's really early, but he's right up there with where Jordan Hudson and Cordell Russell were coming out of high school as high level 4-star players that may very well wind up being, he may be a 5-star when the 2024 fall high school football season rolls around. So it's an interesting strategy. I think I can't remember the last time TCU. I guess it would be that Cordell Russell was the last big recruit that TCU got that was a year before the current class. I think it was 2021 when TCU recruited him as a part of that 2023 class. So it's super encouraging. I think you have to give the offensive staff and Kendall Briles credit for the players that they have recruited. I know the Kendall Briles that might ruffle some feathers for TCU faithful, but look, Haas Haney had a really good showing at the Elite 11 competition. Was one of the best quarterbacks there. His rating continues to rise as a 4-star prospect, getting Ty Hawkins for 2025, another 4-star player, and then Doug Meacham and Malcolm Kelly putting in some work with Jakyle Baker and Adrian Wilson. So super exciting for TCU. Up to 10 players now for the class of 2024. The most recent commit was a specialist from South Lake Carroll, kicker Kyle Lemmerman, who by CSK and Corn Blue, which are two specialist organizations that do kicker, punter, snapper rankings, he's rated as the #1 national kicker prospect for the class of 2024. So a local player, I believe, as well. So visited Texas Tech, visited Arkansas. Those were his final 3, and has put out some very wholesome content on Twitter as well, thanking all of the fans who are wishing him well, and seems like a really first-class individual there. So the class is looking pretty sharp right now, ranks number 44 in the country, and I think people might look at that and say, why is TCU rated so low? The 2023 class was rated in the top 25, but you have to consider that TCU has also added a lot of transfers over the last year or two. So I think going forward, I'm not sure how many players are going to wind up in this class. Is it going to be as
It's a
big as
quantity. It's a
2023?
quantity thing, right? I mean, part of what goes into that overall rank is it's a total score.
Hmm.
So you can have 10 3-stars and have more points than a team that has, you know, 3 4-stars or whatever. So it is a total numbers game there,
Hmm.
at least at this point, until those numbers will start to normalize as you get closer to signing day.
Correct. And I think when you look at where the Big 12 teams rank right now, I want to say TCU was fifth in terms of just what the overall is, but the average rating per recruit is just under 89, which I want to say is third, barely third in the conference behind Texas and Oklahoma. So it's very much a quality over quantity thing, as you said, and with the amount of transfers that have come in, not just for the 2023 class, but also going back to 2022, there are a lot of new players on this roster. So I don't really envision the 2024 class being a 20 to 25 man class just because I don't really know if it needs to be. With the way the portal functions now, you can go out and get, 10 new players, 12 new players through the portal, and maybe you don't have to take a chance on some of these high school players because you can fill certain spots in the portal right away. So, um, I expect the summer to continue to be busy for TCU on the recruiting front. I know there are some outstanding four-star and five-star caliber players that have visited TCU and are still uncommitted. And this will be going all the way through December 2023 and into February 2024. So I think you have to be really happy with where TCU's at right now, just knowing that they're going to be out recruiting really for another 6 weeks or so, and then you got the season, and then there's going to be a lot more recruiting done after the season. So, um, exciting stuff coming out of the recruiting circles for TCU football right now.
Yeah, and in that rankings for the 2025 class, obviously it's way too early to care about this. However, TCU is currently sitting at number 6 overall, behind only Georgia, Alabama, Penn State, Ohio State, and Clemson. So those two
The heavy
commits,
hitters up there.
yeah. I mean, those two commits are extremely strong two commits to start your class off with an elite quarterback and an elite wide receiver. Both will remain high 4 stars, borderline 5 stars is um, it's a pretty incredible way to kick off that recruiting class and portends for bright things ahead. Um, did need to issue correction on a previous note regarding an offensive coordinator. Under any circumstances, you do not, under any circumstances, gotta hand it to them. Okay, I just had to get that drill tweet in there.
Got, got, gotta
I
gotta give
know,
the
I
Frog
know,
faithful a little.
I know. We're gonna just have to deal with that. I'm gonna have to. We're just gonna have to deal with that. I don't know. We could win. Whatever. We're not going there. We're not going there. Recruiting class is looking good, and a lot to be excited about for the Horned Frogs. And um, looking back at the 2023 recruiting class, I want to give a shout out to our new contributor at Frogs of War, Coach Miles Perry. He's been giving us a freshman film room that's been a really entertaining look at some of the highlight films from the incoming freshmen as, breaking down what they are doing well in their highlight film and what they could be bringing to the Horned Frogs going forward. So uh, go check those out at frogsofwar.com. The most recent one was on lineman Marcus Deal. He's officially in the current TCU Go Frogs posted roster as a defensive lineman. He put up big time tape on the offensive line and defensive line. So, a lot of exciting things to see out of him. I know, Russ, you've been really looking forward to Marcus Deal and touting him for quite some time. So excited to. I really enjoyed reading that piece and looking forward to him on the field.
Yeah, I think Miles is working on cooking up a piece on Cameron Cook right now as well, who's a four-star running back of the 2023 class. So excited to see that. Also, some articles out on Cordell Russell, and I believe there was one other. I'm
Channing
having a
Canada.
Channing Canada, yeah, the number one JUCO. How am I sleeping on the number one JUCO prospect in the
Man,
country coming in? I don't know. Having
his
a
film looks good.
must be those Canadian wildfires. I don't want to. I'm
It
blocking
can't
the
think about
I'm
Canada right
blocking
now.
Canada out of my brain right now. But no, Miles has been doing a tremendous job with the freshman film room pieces. If you want to check it out, go to our website frogsofwar.com. There will be more coming in that series here in the near future.
Yeah, and I think that probably will wrap it up for us. So we'll thank you all for following us on Twitter at Frogs of War, for checking out charliehustle.com and using promo code Frogs of War at checkout for 15% off of your order. We thank you for listening, and go Frogs.
Go Frogs.